Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Man's No Bull Beer Reviews. Today I have another beer from High Branch Brewing Company out of Concord, North Carolina. This is a new style for them, at least as far as I know. This is a Maplewood aged barley wine ale. I don't think they've ever done a barley wine before, so I'm pretty excited to see what their take is on it. It's called BT-4. I don't know what that means, and it is 11.8 ABV. And I know on the description they had on Facebook, it said it's more towards the English style barley wine than American, so I don't think it's very hoppy, which is in my preference, at least as far as a non-barrel aged one. So I'm gonna crack it open and see what we got. So this came out at the same time as their Boss Woman, which I had heard a lot about, but I didn't hear anyone say anything about this, positive or negative. So I actually kind of figured this might be the sleeper, because I think everyone likes to say they like barley wines because they just like bourbon barrel stuff, but they don't really like actual barley wines. This has a really nice color to it. It almost looks like a stout in the video, but it is. I don't know if you can see there. It does have a nice like red hue at the bottom. Yeah, you can see right there. With a really nice tan head, but it's definitely on the darker side for a barley wine, which I generally like. Let's see what it smells like. Huh. I do have to say, I'm kind of surprised by the aroma. It's very estery. Like, to me, it smells more like a quad, which is, to me, kind of based on, like, a Belgian barley wine. It smells more like a quad than a barley wine. Yeah, you know what? Now I'm finally getting it. Things are finally clicking in my head. So I had that Boss Woman recently, and I was like, this kind of reminds me of the Salud, excuse me, the Salud banana and coconut stout. I thought there's not any banana in the High Branch stout. And I was like, I don't know, I guess it's just the coconut that makes me think about it. But there's something about it that makes me think banana. And I said to myself, I was like, I don't think that the beer is estery. I think it's something else. But now that I smell and taste this, I really think that that's what it is in the stout. Because this is way, way more like a quad than a barley wine, in my opinion. It has those. It's not the dark fruit character, because that is the same in barley wines and in quads, obviously. But it's just very like estery, like banana and clovey. Excuse me. Tight flavors. I do get a little there is a little smoky character, which I'm assuming is from the Maplewood. Uh, the funny thing is, I actually think this is a really well done beer. I just don't. To me, this is way more like an American attempt in a quad than a barley wine. So I guess technically that's like a fail on their part because the yeast is probably doing something that it shouldn't be. But if they just labeled it that way, I would say they did a pretty good job. It has a lot of pruny character to it too. I think for me, usually a pretty significant difference between quads and barley wines is the attenuation and the carbonation. And this is for being a big caramely beer, this is actually pretty dry and pretty carbonated, which is kind of the opposite of what you usually get in barley wines, which are usually sweeter and less carbonated. But yeah, I wonder if, because I've gotten that same character out of their beers, out of the stouts the bigger stouts that they've finally been doing, because for the longest time their imperial stouts were like 8, maybe pushing 9%, and now they're finally getting up to like that 11-12% range. And to me, they all come off like a little estery, and I was wondering if it was that they were like stressed, and I wasn't sure, and I didn't think that was the case. But now tasting this, where it's kind of a similar similar flavor in this, but because of the style and profile of the beer, it's basically just making it taste like a quad instead of a barley wine. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Whatever house yeast that they use for their big ABV beers is just getting... I don't know if they're not pitching enough yeast or what the deal is, but it seems like it's getting stressed. Because this is really estery. Like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even know that it's stress yeast. I think usually esters come from high fermentation temperatures. So it's not necessarily that the yeast is stressed. It's just that it produces those flavors when it's working in higher temperature conditions. I don't know what their fermentation tanks are like or anything, but yeah, there's something similar in this that I'm getting out of that I get out of the stouts too. It's really hard for me to rate this because if I want a barley wine, this is not doing it. Honestly, if this just said Maplewood American Quad, I'd be all about this. And to me, my thought on beers is always don't name it and don't describe it until you have the final product and decide that it is what you wanted it to be or it's not. And then you can describe it as something else, even if it wasn't your intent, as long as it's still a good beer. And to me, that's kind of where they failed here. I think they should have called it a quad, because that's way, way more where it's leaning. I mean, it's definitely not... they were right, it's definitely not an American barley wine-esque, because it's not very hoppy. But it's just way too... again, I keep going back. It's like way too estery. It's just... It has a Belgian-esque quality to it. It just reminds me of a quad. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not. When I think of barley wine, I don't think of something like this. That's not to say that if they didn't take this and put it in barrels or something, then it wouldn't be a great beer. And I actually still like drinking this beer, but it's not a barley wine. I think this was like $6 a can, which I think is worth it as a beer overall. Like I said, I don't think it necessarily follows the name or the description, but it's still a pretty good beer. And I think if it was labeled as a quad, I would absolutely buy it. And if it's labeled as a barley wine, I would still buy it. I would just know that it's not going to be exactly what it's labeled as. So it's still definitely a buy for me. $6 for a pounder of like a big ass quad or a big ass barley wine, whatever you want to call it, is a pretty good deal. So it's definitely not the best beer they've made or the best of either of a quad or a barley wine, but it's still pretty good, nice, clean beer, and it's worth $6. So I'm gonna give this guy a buy. I think that's all I got in this one. Please like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I look forward to doing the next one. Thanks.